Hi, welcome to my channel. This is just a little video of a little lockdown project I was doing. Basically, it's a little half cabin boat. Now, I've never had a boat, never worked on a boat, never bought a boat, never had nothing to do with boats. And so, anyway, I've bought this boat and I thought I'd do a little video on how I restored it. Um, Now, what you see in the video is not professional. I'm not giving advice. I'm just showing you what I did. Whether it's right or wrong, if you want to enlighten me on certain things, just give us a comment, and hope you like the video. So, a little bit about the boat. It's a little half cabin 14-foot dejon. Now, after getting this boat and then having a little look online, and especially now after using it myself, it's not a boat that I'd recommend. In fact, I strongly recommend not taking one of these type of boats to sea. They're very wobbly. They're very unstable. They're not too bad. I mean, it suits me for what I want. Like I say, I'm only taking it out on a small river, mainly to do a bit of fishing. So it's ideal for what I want, and it's an ideal size. But as you look around it, you can see that it's not in the greatest condition. It's going to need a hell of a lot of work. Looking at the transom, it looks like that's the transom. It looked like it had been built up to take a long shaft engine, and the engine I got with it was a short shaft, so that needed to be dealt with. Had the big tall piece on the top needed to come off. Generally, it was a case of, like, I'm going to have to strip this right back down to nothing, and then sort of go from there, really. So next thing, started ripping it to pieces, trying to get as much as I could out of it. I wanted to get it back to as sort of bare minimum as possible, and then kind of go from there, which was okay. I mean, I knew after first looking at it when we got it back and everything, I knew it was going to be a bit of a. It's not going to be a 5-minute thing, but it was a lockdown project anyway, so it was to be expected. But the problem we had then was that the winter was coming. It was getting dark with an evening and getting cold, so we had snow on the way. So that's why I ended up building. I built like a lean-to on the side of my garden fence, which is something I wanting to do anyway. And I thought if I build it just big enough, then I can just squeeze the boat in, and then at least I can sort of carry on with it through the winter, and still have lights on in there in the evening, and stay a little bit warmer. So once the lean-to was all up, it was so much nicer sort of to be inside rather than out in the cold with torches and head torches. It was nice to be able to have it lit up in there. It was definitely a little bit warm. I actually put a little heater in there, and also I could put my air compressor and a few tools in there, like orbital sander and whatnot. Yeah, and then the next step was kind of like just the hull was okay, wasn't too bad, but it had so many layers of paint put on the top of that boat, inside and out, that where I think the layers have been put on top of each other without really keying it up, it was a lot of flaking going on inside and out. So yeah, that was the next step: sand up and try and take it back as much as I could, to get a decent sort of surface. I must have gone through hundreds and hundreds of sanding pads. On the front of it, it was so thick that I ended up using a hot air gun. Obviously, didn't get it too hot, but you could warm it up just enough to get it to bubble a little bit, and then scrape it off. Must have been about 4 or 5 different colours in there. And then once the main bulk of it was off, then I could go over with a sander and kind of get things, back to a decent surface, ready for like fibreglassing. Really, there's so many little screw holes. There's screw holes everywhere, and the rod holes down the side. There was a lot that is going to need fiberglassing, but you can probably see from the videos that where the rub rail goes around the edge, a few of the bits were like broken off, and they got brittle over time. So we've been able to cut out the rot with them bits, and then fiberglassed it from the inside with just fiberglass matting, epoxy resin, and then fiberglass it from the outside. The same really with the rod holes down the sides. Inside the cabin, it was mainly where there's just screw holes and pinholes. That was mainly like ended up mixing up a fiberglass filler, and that took care of most of them. The main thing was just sanding down, just lots and lots and lots of sanding down, just getting covered and covered in dust. Obviously, I had a mask and goggles on, which you needed, but it just seemed to go on forever. So I had to sort the transom out, which it wasn't too bad. Obviously, they had built it up to take the long shaft engine, but it was really just a case of they just screwed that through. So once you took that off, surprisingly, transom wasn't in that bad nick. You know, it wasn't 100%, but it was pretty solid throughout. So as I'm only using it on a small river and I'm not going to sea or going fast, I decided just to fiberglass mat it, like strengthen it up, clamp it up for 24 hours, and then I think I'll just put a bit of checker plate over the top just to grip the engine. So had to then sort of replace the cabin kind of bulkhead because the old wood was just rotten and soft. So got some marine ply, and what I thought that I'd do is I'd do a left side, a right side, and then just the top and bottom in the middle. So kind of cut out a template with a cardboard, just cut it out of a jigsaw. It was a bit tricky getting it in, very tight fit, but yeah, then once it was in there, that was I think about three coats of epoxy resin, and then just fiberglassed it in around the edges to sort of seal it in. So the floor is aluminium box section, which is Sikaflex down, and then like aluminium sheets over the top of that, which are then Sikaflex down onto the cross section, and then basically just got the sander out, give it a good going over to score it up a little bit, and then fiberglass mat right the way across, all the way up to the bulkhead and down the sides. So the next thing was painting the inside. I wasn't overly stressed about the inside. There's so much flaky paint all over the inside, so got most of it off. We was doing a lot of it by hand, sanding by hand, but ended up put a wire brush on the end of a normal battery drill. That helped a lot, but you can never get all these little bits off. So I end up getting a sealing primer. I'll put anything I used, I'll just put the names of it below. But I used a sealing primer to go over it. I think I've done two or three coats of that, and used a different primer for the wood. So it was all in primer, and then obviously like the top coat. Got a little bit of help with this with one of my little girls painting it with us. But yeah, that was quite nice. Once you started getting the primer on and the paint on, it started to really sort of transform the inside. You know, after you've been working on something so long, you know, evenings and whatnot, it's nice to see it actually starts to sort of like transform a little bit and start to look nice again. It gives you that little boost. So yeah, that was it. The inside was pretty much painted then, and then it was sort of like on to the next. So with the rest of the marine ply, cut out the door, which I had to cut a hole in because I bought a little cabin window to go in that. That was pretty straightforward, just a case of drawing around template, jigsaw, cut it out. And then I had enough left to do like the locker covers at the rear on the deck. They was they fitted just right to kind of use as seats. And I had a little bit that's left that I could do the locker covers in the cabin as well. So I managed to cut the shape to fit them in the cabin lockers in the front, which was quite handy. Everything was like, I think it was about 2 or 3 coats of epoxy resin, and then those all like primed up. I think it was 2 coats of primer, but the cabin bulkhead was obviously going to be white. And then I was going to do the rear locker covers in blue, the same colour as the front of the boat, which I think would just brighten it up a little bit, which was quite nice. I used a carp boot trim to go around the rear lockers, because that way it give it a nice edge, and also it give the top something to sit on, stopped it moving, and it give it a bit of cushioning. And as for the door, I just used a garage door handle on that. It's the only thing I could find really that I could lock. I could put like a bracket on the back of it, and at least I could lock it and unlock it. So, ready for painting. It was just a case of just going over it once more with a fine sand. After that, give it a blow off with the airline, and then wipe the whole top of the boat down with acetone, just to get it nice and clean. I think we did 2 coats of primer, and then with the front, the blue front part of the boat, I'd give it, I think it was 2 coats of the blue. And then what I did was, while the paint was still wet, I had some play sand in a bag, knocking about at home. So what I did was I dried that out. I laid it down on a sheet of plastic, dried it out, and then sieved the sand over the top of the wet paint. Left that overnight, hoovered off the excess, and then just like got the airline, blew off the rest, and then I think it was another two, possibly 3 coats over the top of that. And what that did, it created quite a nice kind of anti-slip effect. And then the rest of the boat, again, like a couple of coats that was just in white. Again, I'll put all the stuff I used down below. Yeah, that was white, and then once them locker covers were blue as well, it really started to kind of come together. You know, the steering wheel was fitted. It started to look like quite a tiny little boat then. I was quite lucky with the hull, because it didn't really need a great deal doing, so that was mainly just a case of like taking the top off, sanding it down to get a nice clean surface. Painted that the same colour as the top, and then obviously like the lower bit that was in black, that was a case of taking that back, and then ended up doing that with a white anti-foul paint, just to keep it all white. So that wasn't too much. A bit awkward climbing about underneath the boat, but other than that, there wasn't a great deal to do on the hull. So once the boat was all painted, I needed to sort of replace the rub rail, like the edging that was going around the boat. Fortunately, with the colours being blue and white, I managed to find it's like an underground water pipe, and it was the blue was very similar to the blue I colour I painted the boat. Yeah, that was a little bit of a tricky thing to do. Basically, I bought the pipe, and then the plan is to cut a slice all the way down the pipe, and then so I could then put that round the edge of that rub rail. It's not brilliant, but it done the job, and it stayed on pretty solid. It's going to do what it's got to do. Again, like this boat was done on a very tight budget. And yeah, in the end, after a lot of painstaking work with a hammer and whatnot to try and get this on there, yeah, the end result wasn't too bad really. I had some carpet out of one of the kids' bedrooms, so decided to use that to carpet inside the cabin. Won't go into this too much because if nothing else, I learnt that I'm not ever going to be a carpet fitter, but it tidied it up and it I don't know, made it feel a little bit more cosy in the cabin. By now, boat's really starting to come together. It's looking good. So after fitting a few like extras, I think I put the mushroom vent in the top of the cabin, a few grab rails. Um, I managed to get the engine on the back. Then it was a case of I had to do the accelerator because nothing really went together. It was all kind of make it fit. But I had the throttle controls fitted. I had to get the steering. The steering was a bit of a pain because the engine didn't have like the tilt tube hole on it. So I had to buy a bracket which was put to one side to allow the steering. The steering's still a little bit stiff because the way the cable goes through underneath the flooring on the boat could probably do with being a little bit shorter. Um, but yeah, that was the next thing. Get the engine on, get the controls all fitted, the steering wheel all connected up, and then yeah, it was down to wiring then. I was quite fortunate that when I got the boat, it had a switch, external switches. They were all fuse switches, and that all worked. The switchboard all worked. So it was just a case of like running the switches, doing the wiring for the lights. I had lights in there. I wanted to get the bilge pump wired up. Yeah, it was just a case of going with the electrics really. So as the boat was going to be set outside on a mooring, I really needed to sort out a cover for it. So I just used a bit. I used tarpaulin to be fair. I bought tarpaulin sheet, and I put some rings with one of them little kits you can get. I put some rings around the edge and some little bungee hooks. Um, I wanted to build a frame up so it come off the cabin. So if the water run on it, it would run off the sides. I've seen boats quite often down the mooring where they have a cover on and they're just full of water. It's almost like a bloody pond on top of the boat. So I wanted to make a sort of like a timber frame up so I could easily lift it off when I took the boat out and just lay it back on and put the cover over it. And I just used a bit of bat and a bit, I think it was like 1x2, and basically just screwed it up, and it seems to have worked really well. I've not had a problem with it yet. Touch wood, the water just runs off it, and it's all pretty covered and sealed. Very rarely do I get water getting inside. So the boat was really starting to come together now. I just need to get the windows in. I had used a template from the old windows and bought new perspex and just used the old ones and cut round them with a jigsaw. Got some Clayton White, which is like the rubber that goes round the edge. Yeah, it wasn't easy. It was it was a bit of a workup just trying to get it in because the holes in the fiberglass are never really cut exact. Yeah, so that was tricky getting the windows in, but once they was in, it really did start to sort of take shape then. Yeah, it was starting to sort of become nearer and nearer to getting it on the water.